Hello there. Welcome to the SPS pod. In this episode, we're doing a performance origins deep dive with another creator. This time with Tobi Emonts-Holley. He's a German, but he lives in Scotland, and he helps people take on bigger challenges in life and has a deep interest in extreme performance sports, which we'll talk about in this podcast. But less than me discussing it, and let's jump into the intro. You're listening to the Self Performance Strategies podcast. My name is Stephen, and I am your host. The SPS pod is all about breaking down the complex world of performance and making it easier for you to build momentum in your life. Essentially, I'm here to help you do less dumb shit. The SPS pod is brought to you by the Pro Accelerator Program, a program specifically designed to help business owners and solopreneurs get rid of mental fatigue, save at least 10 hours a week, and also build a lot of momentum towards the key pillars and the goals that matter most to them. If that sounds like something you're interested in, check out the show notes and follow the links for the Pro Accelerator. But now, it's time to get into this episode. Hello. Welcome. We are in episode 56 of the Self Performance Strategies podcast. In this episode, we are doing a performance origins deep dive with another creator, a father, husband, and CEO, Tobi Emonts-Holley. Got it right. Nearly got it right. Let me tell you a little bit about Tobi. I've known Tobi for about a year and a half now, if not longer, on Twitter. He is a husband, father of 6, which I'm like, wow, 6, how does he manage that? We'll probably talk about that in this podcast. He's a CEO of a non-profit in the Care Centre in Scotland, but he's not Scottish. You'll probably discover that very quickly with his accent. And he's also a hybrid athlete. And I think this is one of the things that really interests me about Tobi and his content. He really shines a light on some extreme performers, people who are putting themselves to the limits when it comes to high performance, especially within the fitness sphere, and not just the fitness sphere. So I'm very interested to have Tobi on the podcast. He's got about 60,000 followers on Twitter. Very excited to have you here. Tobi, that was a very long intro. How are you?
Good. I'm really good, thank you. We've had a lovely heat spell here in Scotland. So yeah, and as you said, I'm not from here. I'm from Germany. So it's more of a summer that I was used to as a kid here now.
Yeah. It's strange seeing. I'm over in Vancouver, obviously, and come from Northern Ireland, so the weather in Scotland and Northern Ireland would be very similar. And to see how hot it has been over the last few years in the UK, I mean, I would have to go to France, or we would have to go to France or Spain to have that kind of weather. And now it seems to be quite regular in the UK. So that's kind of fun for the UK people.
Yeah, no, it's good. You don't feel bad about not leaving the country in the summer now, so you still get a tan. So that's good.
That's good. It's good to hear. Well, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. We're going to dive into it, and I'm going to find out what's going on in Tobi's world. How did Tobi become who he is today? And that's exciting because you've got a lot of really good areas I want to talk to you about. But first of all, just to frame the whole conversation, what is your personal self-performance philosophy or your personal success philosophy?
Yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic question. And I think what I've learned over the last few years is sometimes what we try and do is we try to find like what it is that we are supposed to do rather than think about creating it. And I think that always often leaves people kind of wondering and lost. So for me, it's about creating whatever it is that you want to see. And the first thing I think you need to create is a vision. You need to create the vision for yourself, not in terms of what you want to be, because that's what we're always told in school, choose a subject to study this, to become this, and it's all about what. But I think it's about who do you want to be as a person? And your profession is something that is, might be in support of that, but it isn't the primary thing. So who it is you want to be, create that vision and know your why. Like, why do you want to do that? Because whatever that vision is, I guess hopefully it should scare you to a certain degree because it means there's some growth along the way. And when you have growth kind of coming towards you, there will also be obstacles. And knowing your why and your purpose for that, that's going to help you stay on the path and overcome those obstacles. So that would be my philosophy is those two things, crafting a vision and knowing your why.
You must be reading my content on Twitter.
I've read one or two of your threads over the years for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I 100% fully agree. That vision is so important, that why. But I think the point that you really touched on there that I'm going to jump into a little bit is that you create your purpose. You don't find your purpose. And this is probably going to relate to your story and your performance origins. But I know in my life, the thing that I'm doing today, I created it by following my interest. And it was through doing years of leadership that I discovered that I like coaching. And then it was through years of coaching while in leadership roles that I ended up deciding that I should try to be a consultant coach on my own. So I kind of created it, but I didn't start 10, 15 years ago with this idea that I was going to be a leader and a coach. It molded over time. So in your experience, jumping into, if we go back 5, 10, 15 years in your life, how did you come to that philosophy? How did you come to that vision, that why, that idea that you had to create your purpose? Because I think it's a fantastic thread of thought to pull on.
Yeah. So I think what happened is as a child, so maybe going back a bit more than 15 years, but in a way, I had a great childhood. But I was never really pushed, right? So my
Okay.
parents wanted me to do well, and they would always support me. My dad or was a teacher, and he would always help me with homework and really try and get me, up to the kind of the standard that I wanted to achieve. But it was really about the standard that I think I wanted. And in a way, so lacking that push. So, I guess in the US, you've got a lot of kids that do semi-professional sports, trying to go for a scholarship. I had none of that. So yes, I went to the gym. Yes, I did loads of stuff, but that's the thing. I did loads of things and never excelled in one. So there was always something I felt was lacking. I was never really good at anything. I was kind of a jack of all trades, which is probably still true to a certain degree today. But what happened is after I left school, I went to Scotland and I did a kind of voluntary year in a care home, still the one that I'm now kind of attached to working in. And that was a real shock for me. So, an only child coming from living in the middle of the city in a part in Germany where, we've got 50 million people around us and coming to a country that has 5 million people, which was a cultural shock in terms of the country. But the major shock was really from this household of three, me, my mum, my dad, to coming to live in a household of over 10 people and living and caring for adults with special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a real shock of suddenly just being thrown into the deep end and going like, okay, now you're an adult. Now you need to just, perform in a way. And I've suddenly felt pushed to a degree that I'd never felt before, also getting really uncomfortable, sharing spaces, having to just step up. But that at the same time, something happened to me where I realized over the year, I found something that I really loved doing, which was A, pushing myself, and B, helping and serving others. That was something that I just realized I had such an attachment to the people that I was working with and living with, which I didn't have before. I always thought, like the people I went to school with, all high achievers, all from a fairly rich background. I wasn't from a rich background, but the other kids were. And I always thought I needed to measure up to whatever their standard was. So those kids would after school go, 6-month internship at Hong Kong because their dad knew the CEO of a company there and that sort of stuff. And I just, and I was trying to prove myself. And even in my mind, I was like, okay, I need to go to this university to do this course. So then when we meet again, I can then tell them all the stuff that I'd done. And that was in such a stark contrast to what was actually inside me, which was that like, I'm really content with what I'm doing. I'm helping people. They help me become a better version of myself. But that took a few years. But that was kind of probably the first major struggle about 15 years ago to realize that story that I thought I needed to live up to, which was pleasing others, might not be the right path.
That's great. That idea of not pleasing others or following the hedonic treadmill or the keeping up with the Joneses, whatever way you want to frame it. Some people live their whole life without realizing that is not the way to live a life. That materialism or chasing or desiring what other people are doing is what you should be doing, and that you should walk your own path. So, I mean, that's fantastic that happened to it at such a young age, that you put yourself out there in that situation, and then you landed in this foreign country in this busy house, helping people that you've probably never really been around in your life before, probably never been experienced that, and then you're stuck in this sort of like, I need to adapt, but then at the same time with the adaptation, you were getting fuel to your fire. Where you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. This is much better than chasing what other people are doing. So with that going on, I want to sort of get into this sort of journey of like hybrid athlete, father of six, CEO. That's a lot. What does that look like? I mean, if we go back to, this young man who's landed in Scotland, what was that journey? What was that like going from being in a foreign country, doing this new thing you've never done before, helping people with special needs? Is it disabilities and special needs, or
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Disabilities.
learning disability?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic work. What was that journey? You're still in Scotland. I mean, I would almost argue there's more people leaving Scotland than there is people moving to Scotland. Sorry, any
That's
Scottish
right.
people listening to this, but coming from Northern Ireland, I think I can make those jokes. But yeah, what was that journey, man? I'm really intrigued.
Yeah. I think probably the most important thing that happened is I think it was the third person. So within 60 minutes of arrival, I met a girl who's now my wife. So that was so it was
Serendipity.
absolutely, yeah. She was kind of doing the same. She was going to do the same kind of job as me as a kind of volunteer for a year, and her parents were actually running the place I was going to stay in. So talking about throwing yourself in the deep end of the pool, I was kind of living with my in-laws
Already.
straight away. Um, but yeah, so we hit it off straight away, and it just took us a few weeks to kind of figure out that long conversations and realizing, yeah, we really like each other. So that was number one. So I started kind of living and working alongside my wife from now wife from the beginning, which also I guess shaved off a few years in terms of getting to know each other and figuring out, can you live together or not?
Hmm.
We had all of this kind of figured out very, very quickly because out of
Yeah.
necessity. So yeah, really kind of finding your soulmate. So that was number one. Yeah, the other thing is I did go to university, so I did do the year of doing the voluntary year. Pull that through. Although, as I said, there were definitely some moments where I struggled, but kind of pushed through. And then I said I was going to go to university, but I never left the work as such. I was still kind of working and living in Edinburgh, in where I'm now, still in Scotland, part of the home. And I was going to university, and I studied economics there, which again was actually something I never intended to do. But one of the nice things about the Scottish university system is you sign up for 3 courses in the beginning, and you can then, over the course of a year, choose which one you want to be your major and drop the others or keep them or whatever. I just chose economics as one of the ones that seemed semi-interesting. I was actually going to do environmental studies. And then, yeah, just loved it and just kept going with it. Somehow ended up with a PhD in the subject, which was another one of those.
just ended up a PhD. Just happened.
It
Yeah.
just it just happened. There was I think I normally don't cry that much, but I remember crying over the PhD of just wanting to quit the PhD because it was just so miserable at times. So yeah, that was
Okay.
that was
Well,
certainly
let's tap into that, because I mean I want to get into that pain because this is the performance
yeah,
origins. I want this
that's
is
right.
a I want to find out how you became the man you are today. But the way you first told that story is like you fell out of a plane and hit every branch of the lucky tree on the way down.
Yeah,
I landed in a place, found my passion, found my wife, went to university, worked out well, got a PhD. That it sounds
yeah.
great, but then you said that you were going to quit your PhD. So what was? I mean, it's amazing you've got a PhD. That's a lot of work, and I know it's a lot of stress. A lot of stress. But what was that? When you pick into that, you talk about elite performance a lot, and I would suggest I've seen your videos of you working out. You go up on the mountains. You're hiking. You've got your 5 kids, kind of like, I don't know where you put them in different backpacks and pockets. You carry them up the
Yeah.
mountain with you. Uh, but we go back to that PhD, that moment of quitting. Take your mind back to that. What did you do, or how did you work your way out of that moment of like, I want to quit my PhD?
Yeah. So I think the reason I did the PhD was that I finished my bachelor, really enjoyed the subject, really loved the everything to do with it, and there was a chance to do a master's, and I did well with my bachelor, and I was selected to join the master's program, which was a fantastic program. It was all the Scottish universities coming together and providing one economics master's course. That was the hardest thing academically I'd ever had to do. Like I was honestly, I was like bottom 1% of the people that should be on that course. Everybody else was so much better, and I had to work incredibly hard. I had to get a tutor and had to take out a loan to pay for that, and just like it was so much work. um at the same time we were having baby number two, so there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on for sure. But yeah, I remember that was one time where I first really realized that there's so much more about the potential in me than I first thought was possible. Because I spent kind of half a year from September to March just thinking I couldn't do this. It was too much. It was too hard. I couldn't, how would I ever kind of rise to the occasion? And then I think it was within the span of 15 days, we had about 8 exams, which were the last exams, the ones that counted the most. So even just that timetable just looked so scary.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of setting those goals in the calendar, knowing, okay, that's when the exam is, and then working back nearly 2 months in terms of, okay, what day do I prep what subject to get ready for that one exam? And getting into an incredible flow state for weeks on end. I would be really just going super hard early morning, 8 a.m. in the library, sometimes leaving 8 p.m., coming home, making sure I could help my wife with whatever was possible. And then sometimes just going straight back into the library the next morning, but just hitting this flow state straight away. And it was a wow, like this is amazing. And I passed, which I really didn't think would happen. And so part of that process of taking the master's was, you're also looking at, okay, what is possible next? And there was a program with the Scottish government where they were offering PhD positions because I couldn't pay for one. And, this seemed like a good opportunity to get a position with the kind of Scottish government, part funded. And I went to an interview and they were like, yeah, we'd like to have you. And, these are the requirements we need. And I was like, okay. And at the end, they were like, you do realize this is a very kind of technical PhD. This is not about, if you know about economics, you could write a lot, but this was like very, very heavy formula-based technical. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm really not a technical guy. Like, this is not my forte. This is not what I should be doing. But let's see if I can.
Yeah.
There was just that voice, and like, you've done this master thing, and you didn't think you could. Let's just see. Let's just test the waters and see if it's possible. And if I get it, and I should go for it. And so that was kind of that's the way I approached it. Was like, okay, let's just do it. If I get in, I'll take it, and I'll get the PhD. However, I would also preface that it was, again, I think, an externally motivated goal, which is something I talk about a lot, which isn't a good thing at all.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be pushed or, chasing goals that are, it was a title. It was this title of like, can I do a PhD?
Yeah.
It was about proving something to myself, but also this notion of like, oh, I could get a letter that says doctor in front of it. I don't know. I never use the title. It's kind of meaningless. Yeah. But it was, so this goal being extrinsically motivated, that's where the pain came in. Because I was just like, a PhD takes a long time. It took me 3.5 years, nearly 4 actually, to get through the whole process. And sitting there day in, day out, doing something you don't like. In the meantime, I had to travel through to Glasgow, which, if you know Edinburgh and Glasgow, there's a bit of a rivalry going on, but Glasgow's just super grey. So it was just depressing driving into the rain, surrounded by these grey buildings, doing something I didn't enjoy that much.
Glasgow is kind of sorry, any Glaswegians or Ouijies listen to this, but your city is kind of grey compared to Edinburgh. Edinburgh's fantastic with the castle on the hill, and it's stunning. But
yeah, that's it. So yeah, the coming back to that moment of like standing, I remember standing there with my wife was, I think at that point, actually pregnant with baby number 4, because obviously that kept progressing towards kind of third year in the PhD. And I just had a nervous breakdown, probably. Just stood there crying, just said, I don't want to go on anymore. This is so dull. I hate it so much. I hate every moment that I have to just learn the formulas, apply them, run the program, write about it. It's just so boring. And she said, look, whatever you want to do, I'll support you, but is it really what you want to do? And I knew it wasn't what I want. I didn't want to quit. and that was a great conversation we were having, because I was like, well, another thing that I now talk about a lot is being an example to your kids. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell my kids, you know what? I nearly got a PhD one day. It was like, no, let's just get through, push through, learn the lessons. And that's what I wanted to do. I just didn't want to quit on something that I had already committed so much
So
time
much
and
time
effort
too.
into.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a smart line of thought, because there's some cost fallacy, as we all know, where you don't want to keep putting hours and money into something that is going to drive you insane. But when you're doing some type of certificate or degree or PhD, you can see a finish line. I mean, the finish line is only 6 months or a year away or 18 months away. That would, I think that would probably eat at you the rest of your
Mhm.
life. Being, what if I had just stuck in for 18 months and just got that done? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just smart. I think it's a smart choice, because you're right. I mean, I something that you said there about doing the technical stuff, and I've worked in different jobs, and I can't stand being a project manager, or with the other things that I did. The real Gantt chart formulas, spreadsheet work, that stuff, just I automatically start to seize up when people put that work in front of me, like sitting for hours in front of, like, software with Excel in my life is a dirty word. And I went through that, and that made me realize that I like doing what I like doing. But you have to, we go back to what you opened the podcast with, is like, you have to walk a path to find out what you're interested in. And you wouldn't know whether you were technical or not unless you put yourself in an environment where you had to push yourself within this PhD with these technical elements. So, good for you for pushing through. I think that's one time the sunk cost fallacy. You can kind of push that aside and be like, no, let's get this done. So I think
Mhm.
I would say that was the right choice. Would you, do you now
Uh,
look back at that and agree?
yes, because of I think the lessons I've learned from it. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, was it a smart choice to do the PhD in terms of my career and what I do now? Definitely not, because I'm not using it. Because with the studies, the bachelor being so broad, you learn the subject really kind of the main parts, and that was
Yeah.
really fun. I was studying it during the 08, 09 crisis, so it was just like, you were opening the newspaper and you were just learning about this stuff. So
Yeah.
it was a perfect time to kind of learn it. Masters being very technical, but again, also amazing people, amazing tutors. So it was really, really fun. And then this very, very narrow PhD focus, but for so much longer. But again, I think that the other thing I felt though is, well, if I can do that, then I can really do kind of
And it's,
anything I want,
yeah.
because I could push through for so long to something I didn't like, something that I'm not, I don't have a gift in it. I saw all these people that were giving talks during, different PhD open days and stuff, and I just was amazed by their level of detail and study and love for the subject that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't share. And somehow I still, you know, realized for myself, well, yes, you might not enjoy it. Yes, it might suck, but you know what? Work hard and you get through it. And
Yeah.
that is something that will, serve you kind of for the rest of your life.
100%. I think what you're describing there is something that you know, what I think about quite a lot, or I talk about quite a lot. Not necessarily just on Twitter, but just in life in general. Having that one big thing that you did in your life that shows you that you can do big things. It might not have anything to do with what you're currently doing in your life, but the fact that you put yourself through an extended time period of focusing on something and you achieve something, you have that investment in the bank of you, of like, I've done that before. I've done something that is painful but has
Mhm.
rewards. And I honestly believe, and I'll get your opinion on this, but I think a lot of the reasons why a lot of men, and we'll jump into sort of men feeling a bit lost, because it's something that I kind of do with business owners. I know you directly hit dads who are feeling a bit lost. I know some of our compatriots on Twitter who also run coaching businesses, or help people. This idea of a lot of men being lost in society these days. And I truly believe it's because there isn't, they don't look at, or they haven't got that experience of, I've done this for X amount of time and I achieved this. And then they use that as energy or as fuel to go on to the next thing. Would that be something you agree with?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think if we don't push ourselves to those new heights, and as you said, in a way, I guess it's like you need to prove to yourself that the stories that others might tell you or you tell yourself are often not true, because
Hmm.
they're often stemming or coming from a position of fear. So the fear being either yourself wondering, what if I fail?
Yeah.
And with others, I think sometimes it's about, I can't see you doing that because I didn't try it myself. So, and that is a very powerful squeeze on your kind of self-confidence. And you have to step out of that, and you have to really say, well, do you know what? I need to try and as you said, kind of figure it out yourself, like with the technical stuff, like can you do it, or
Can you do? Yeah.
you wouldn't know. The only caveat to that I would say is, the sooner you can realize and learn to listen to your inner voice and what truly makes you happy and what sets your world on fire versus what you think should set your world on fire, the better off you will be.
Yes. 100%. 100%. That's why I mean, I'll go off on my own little tangent to talk about that, but I totally believe I've left money on the table over the last couple of years when it comes to my Twitter journey, because I am so focused on, I love coaching people. I don't do Twitter growth. I haven't jumped into other sort of like communities or anything. I haven't really partnered up with any other people being like, oh, let's do this thing here or that. I'm like so narrow focused on, I want to create my world, because I know I get a lot of energy from talking to people. I know I get a lot of energy from helping people. I love what I do. It's just making it scalable and more profitable. That's the game that we're all playing. So I 100% agree with that. I actually, I think it was the Arnold Schwarzenegger um, documentary. I don't know if you've watched it yet. It's on Netflix. I
Not
was
yet,
kind of
no.
flicking through a little bit of it, and going back to the conversation we're having about men feeling lost. But I think his brother died young in a car crash and was a bit of a drunk because of the pressure of his family. And I think his dad was, came back from World War II, Austrian, and there was a lot of at home problems. Let's not dive too
Hmm.
deep into that. We're not into having a deep history lesson. But then Arnie, he found working out. Um, and I think I was actually having a conversation. I don't think I know I was having a conversation with somebody else, and they went, "Well, why do you think that was? Why do you think that Arnie went on to be this hero, in his life basically, and his brother went on to, I think, die in a car crash at age 30. I might have that stat wrong, but and I basically said it's because Arnold Schwarzenegger quickly realized what progressive overload was. He quickly
Hmm.
realized what doing 10 sets was, and then being able to do 12 sets a week later, and then being able to do 14 sets after that. He found out that there is a progression, there are steps. Like, obviously, it's not linear. We all know success is a bit of a up and down chart. But I personally feel like why Arnold Schwarzenegger was able to pull himself out of that is because he saw a step by step self improvement plan through working out. And this is where I'm going to loop it back around to you and your interest in sort of elite athletes. Like some of the people you've talked about are just insane. I
Hmm.
mean, they're like David Goggins on heroin. They seem to be like more extreme than him. Uh, so where did that interest come from in your life? You've done this PhD. Were you always fit and healthy? Were you always into this extreme sports? Were you always into hiking and exercising? Or did the PhD and the putting yourself through this type of process of facing struggles, did that lean into you working out more, or was the working out around before? Where did that interest come from?
Yeah, so working out has always been part of what I've done. My dad, being a PE teacher, he
Nice.
used to take me and used to play basketball every week with him and kind of a group of colleagues, and yeah, kind of go to the gym. And he was a massive Arnold Schwarzenegger fan and all of that stuff. So pumping iron was kind of,
That's
was
awesome.
something, yeah, I grew up with. So that was really cool. Um, so yeah, had always been, as I said, was always part of the journey, but never kind of elite athleticism. It was just like kind of just working out and being fit. I used to hate running. And I remember I think it was 2013, I read an article about the CrossFit Games and Rich Froning. So that was something that I was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. Like these guys are really fit, and that piqued my interest. And I started doing CrossFit at that time. And at the same time, while I started that, I stumbled across a company in California called SealFit. Now, their kind of angle being they used to try and train people for buds to get them kind of through SEAL training, and then they
Hmm.
had more and more kind of civilians join and do that program. And they had kind of a mental side to it, a mental kind of coaching program, and I joined that, which was very, very beneficial for the PhD. Actually, that was, I would say, apart from the support I got at home, is that mental program really helped me see through the PhD and set the right goals and work my way
Awesome.
into a kind of positive mindset through that. But one other thing they were offering was a 52-hour kind of crucible experience, which is similar to Hell Week.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that, I just thought this is so insane. But again, there was this inner curiosity of like, ooh, could I? You
Yes.
know? So, I, if I remember correctly, I signed up in 2014, and what happened actually, I had this trifecta of three things happening kind of around the same time, and followed by a big crash. So it's also important of always goal setting, of having the next goal available for you.
Yeah.
Um, but in April 2016, I'd signed. I was due to do this 52-hour crucible in California. So we went on a summer kind of on a family holiday. We were due to have baby number four a couple of months later, and as soon as we came back from California, I was having my viva for the PhD. So those three things came all at in
Yeah.
spring 2016. Which again, looking back, it proved to me, especially that year 2015 to 2016, how far you can push it if you're
Yeah.
really organized, if your vision is true, if your support is great, and you know your why. And it's not about just having a support system and pushing, but being that loop that I was giving my wife what she needed to be the mom that she is, and she was giving me the things that I needed to pursue those goals, which was absolutely fantastic. So, by coming back to the fitness element, that was a major thing. So that was, as I said, 52 hours, no sleep, that surf torture, hiking up a mountain at night, hallucinating. We did one exercise, one thing was called a push-up wave, where we did 1,000 push-ups in a row after being awake for nearly 40 hours. It was just,
Wow.
it was absolutely incredible. But the most important part was actually the people. The people you went through the program, they were just amazing. Because it's been 10 years and we're still in contact today. So that was absolutely amazing. So I think from that period of time in 2016 of this heavy push, I then suddenly achieved all the goals I had set out to do. Right. So I'd got through the PhD. We had our baby number four, which was absolutely amazing, and the most important thing at the time, of course, and gone through this crucible experience. So kind of proven to myself, I can really physically also push myself to extremes. But I didn't have anything else lined up after that. So and it sounds really silly because you're like, well, you've done all these, amazing family. And of course, family was and is amazing. But I think sometimes when you don't have, and I lost kind of the vision for myself because I had this extrinsically motivated goal of the PhD. I had this intrinsic motivation from this camp, but I've done them both at the same time and not realized, oh, suddenly I don't know what's that next version going to be because
Yeah.
I'd achieved those goals. And that took me probably a good 2 years to kind of work
Yeah.
through and get through that slump.
It's kind of what I
That
do
was,
in my job, what you're describing there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that in my coaching, my job, it's my
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
100%. It's so common. It happened to me in my life. I raced towards a certain wage at a certain job title in a corporate, and I got it, and then I just felt sad afterwards because I was like, "What's next?" And it made me realize that I'd attached this sort of not glamour, but I thought that it was going to solve all my problems. And when I got the job, it was like nothing really changed. It was just I just got paid more, and it didn't really change my life. It didn't make my life. It didn't make my life what I thought my life was going to be at that point. And that was a big lesson for me. And that happened 2016, 17, maybe 18 for me. 17, 18 for me. Yeah.
Mm.
It was actually the start of my slow way out of the organization to starting my job because then when I got to that nice wage, I was like, I don't know if this is where I want to be because I a bit of background from my stories. I didn't really know about online business until probably 18, 19 that I actually noticed that it was something that you could do. It was doable.
Hmm.
Up until that point, when I got out of my bad years of drinking and partying, I mean, you know probably a little bit about my past. You've probably seen that on Twitter. I spent 10
Yeah.
years in my 20s partying, and I woke up at 30 and I was like, what have I done? And the only thing that I knew at that point, because I'd been a manager for 7 or 8 years since leaving university in crap retail jobs. Burton Menswear, by the way. That was my big. If you'll know
Nice.
that the UK
Yep.
listeners will know what Burton's Menswear was, but I used to run a Burton Menswear store for many years, and work within the sort of the top man umbrella. North American listeners will have no idea what we're talking about
Nope.
right now, but yeah, so I moved to Canada during the 2008 2009 crash, because UK was not great. Let's just say that, especially the north of England and Scotland, because
Yeah.
yeah, obviously the government doesn't send a lot of money up that direction. But I chased corporate leadership ladder. That's what I saw. It's the only thing I knew. My mind was just like, okay, well, get to that level of manager, get to the next level of manager, get to being an area manager, get to director. That's how you make money. You just keep climbing the ladder. And then when I finally got to that certain point in the ladder, I was like, this was dumb. I don't even like what I'm doing. And that's when I started to think about things differently. So I totally get that. And the
Hmm.
hook it back into what I do now, a lot of business owners who I help, we're talking 6, 7, even 8-figure business owners who I've helped in the last 2 years. They're in the same spot. They got their business to a certain level. They ground it out for years. They got to this like, oh, I'm successful now. I've got my business. I've got the money coming in. I've got my team. I've got my employees, or whatever it is that they set out their amount of money a year. And then they just go into maintenance mode for 2 years, and they feel sad and lost and
Hmm.
underwhelmed and like, well, what's going on now? And it's because we've lost the grind. We lost that, well, the next peak. We got to the top of the mountain, and then we went into a valley, and then we just sat in the valley being like, well, should I climb another mountain? You don't even know which mountain you want to climb. So
Hmm.
you've got to pick that next peak, and usually that peak has to be higher as well to challenge you. So
That's right.
the question I'm going to ask here, that's your biggest struggle, I would guess, then, was
Hmm.
that 2016. Post doing all that amazing stuff. You've got 4, maybe 5 kids popped out. You've got 6 now. You're in that 2 year kind of barren desert period of feeling a bit lost. That sounds like to me that was your biggest struggle over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
What was that? How did you get yourself out of that? What was that like, and how did you pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, so I think um, one moment that really stands out, which was I had signed up for, I think it was a year actually after that, I ran the marathon in Stirling,
Nice.
and that went okay. That went okay. Wasn't great. And I promised myself, I thought like, you know what, next year I'm really, really gonna crush it like this, I've done it first one ever and I can do it again. But I had just no drive. I had no drive, and I was just like, I was relying on kind of that past, like I was, thinking, oh, I've done this 52-hour thing. Nothing else will kind of challenge me because we're kind of assuming, it's the same with the PhD in a way where you go, I've reached that peak now, therefore I'm on this level, which is so false.
Yeah.
You need to work on yourself every single day because if you don't
Agreed.
progress, you will regress. And I wasn't really aware of that. And I think circling back to what I said at the beginning, which was don't think about like what you want to be, but who you want to be.
Yeah.
And I had so much attached to myself, like what I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody who had finished this crucible experience and who had done the PhD and had a great family. Um, those were all kind of what's rather than who. Like
Yes.
now it's very clear. Like I want to be the best father I can be. I want to serve the people that I work with the best possible, and I want to try and see how much I can excel myself to serve others more. Those are kind of like who. It doesn't matter kind of how I do it. But yeah. So anyway, kind of going back to the kind of race. So I signed up for the next year. Um, Started off way too fast, running with people I shouldn't be running with because they were really good runners. And I just really realized, hang on, like you really suck at this and you haven't trained. I hadn't trained enough. And, marathon being 26 miles at mile 18, because it was back at my own kind of university grounds, there was a little side road. And I just thought, you know what? This is stupid. Like you're not running the way you want to run. you've really kind of I was so disappointed in myself. I just said like, I'm gonna take myself out of this race now. So I walked down the side road, found this lonely bus like by a housing estate with the bus driver outside smoking a cigarette and somebody inside just like on their phone. And I went inside with all my gear, and the two were looking at me just like, what's this? Who's this person? Why is he here? And the bus wasn't about to leave for another 15 minutes. And I was just sitting there and just realizing, my God, like you've really lost it. Like that is not a good position to be in. And the reason I'm telling that is because that was in a way where how I was in most areas. It was like at work, I was showing up. It was okay, but there was no
Yeah.
spark in it. There was nothing where you go, I'm excited about something new here. Or, obviously family being primary and always put in for them, but it was just all the other stuff were just lackluster. Training was lackluster, job was lackluster, that personal development was kind of finished with because I thought I'd done it. So what was that to do? And yeah, so that journey on that bus that really stuck with me, and I really made a promise to myself like that this is the low point. Like now you figure out a way through and you figure out a way out. And that was really kind of that moment where I actually went back to those courses that I'd taken that kind of got me through the PhD, and to really create that new vision again of just saying, well, who am I going to be now?
Mm.
And that was kind of so again that in that valley, I basically fell into a ditch, which was a bus ride, and at that point, I promised myself I'm going to climb out and I'm going to go higher.
Love it. I love it. I really do. Yeah, those dark moments, those moments will shock you. I've got a litany of them. I've got a library full of moments where you have those pivots. You're like, well, I don't want to do this anymore, and and yeah. So it's really interesting to hear that, because I think that bus journey must have been quite depressing for you, especially when the bus moved away and the doors closed and you realized, oh, I can't get off the bus and go back to the race, and then you're kind
Hmm.
of like your decision's locked. That must have been
Yeah.
a lot of pressure, but I'm glad that listening to you that you're like, oh well, this is I've messed up here, and then I've got to go back and move away from what you describe as ends goals, but get into means goals, because I think that's
Hmm.
where a lot of people get confused with goal setting, and it's people, they want certain products, or they want this, they want that, they want that achievement, but what is it you actually want to feel? Like I wanted to have a happy, gratitude filled, peaceful life. So how do you show up each day to make that possible? Like
Hmm.
what are the actions that you have to take so you feel gratitude, that you feel peaceful, that you don't feel regret, that you feel loved? Well, how do you show up? And when I mean loved, your self love, because if you're sitting on the sofa eating ice cream, if you'd gone, let's go into imagination land. If that bus journey
Hmm.
had turned you into an ice cream eating, Netflix watching, junk food eating loser who just decided that my life's over, like that's a dark path that you could have gone down. But you, at that point, because of the struggles you've gone through, you were like, well, no, this is a low point for me then to push forward, because you chose those means goals. You wanted to lean into who you wanted to become.
Yeah,
So I think
that's
that's
right.
it. Yeah, very interesting that you went through that. That's a big struggle overcame. So good for that. And it sort of leans into your interest into extreme sports. And I would be, I'm just saying this. I'd really be interested to see how you would write the thread about that bus journey. That would
I
be,
could, yeah, I think I should write about that journey.
yeah,
That's right.
the worst
Because
bus journey I ever had.
worst and best. So worst in terms of like I was really trying to be quite metaphorical with it in terms of like I was leaving something, but I was getting off being somebody else, because that bus journey was about 20 minutes and was really I realized what was going on, and I was kind of, because as I said before with the PhD, where I didn't want to quit, and in a way I knew I could have finished the marathon, but I wanted to force myself into a moment of real like pain of just saying, you
Yeah.
know what, like let's just experience this, because don't muddle through this anymore and actually face who you've become for the last 2 years. Because the other element that happened during that time, so I finished university, I became operations manager for the nonprofit that I still am with. Um, Great job, like great, but I know I didn't give it like I didn't push myself to the best possible version of that manager, which I could have become. And at the same time, what happened is I was always thinking, well, we were talking about Scotland earlier, like maybe we should move. Maybe you should go somewhere else, you know? Maybe you should go to Australia, had friends there, maybe go to California, had friends there. And I talked to people about that a few times, you know, and they were like, oh, you know, this is nice here. And so there was like an inkling in terms of, oh, maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. Maybe
Yeah.
I should go somewhere else. But that is also part of the what, you know,
Yeah.
what do I want to be? I want to be a citizen of Australia because it's like the UK but sunny, you know, that sort of thing. But actually, so being very miserable also with the surroundings in terms of being miserable of like, yeah, well, Scotland is grey, and you know, what am I doing here? And you know, all of those elements where it was a very, very negative space that I was in myself. And that bus journey and what came out of it, and loads of conversations with my wife, because we're both kind of wondering, you know, what's next in our lives in terms of, you know, should we maybe move or should we stay? Should we, whatever should we do? And really realizing like, okay, hang on, even if we wanted to move, we need to first fix all the internal stuff,
Yes.
because wherever we go, we'll take that baggage
Yes.
with us,
That's where
you know?
wherever you are, there you are. That kind of yeah.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
just go. So we said, okay, you know, if we end up going somewhere, that's fine, but let's go kind of without that baggage.
Yeah.
Let's just sort that stuff out first before we would move. We would physically move.
Brilliant.
So that was also happening at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. No, I had that experience. I pretty much left the UK. Um, I didn't fix the internal stuff, but I knew I needed to get out of the living for the weekend loop that I was in, and
Hmm.
I know that I probably could have stayed in Northern Ireland, moved back home and lived with my parents and stayed in Northern Ireland, or started a life in Northern Ireland away from that. But I had an opportunity to go to Canada, and that 7,000 extra miles of perspective made me realize that it was the inner game. Because when I landed in Vancouver, when I started getting into my normal life in Vancouver, the first 6 months or a year was like a holiday. But then when I was working towards getting the visa to allow me to stay, then there was Steve. Oh, here I am again. It's there's all the insecurities, there's all the BS, there's the life's not going great, so let's go out and party at the weekend because I'd find friends, and I nearly slipped back into it, and then I was lucky enough. Yeah, maybe I had a few weeks or a few months where I did kind of, but I pulled myself back out of it. Oh, no, 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 no. That's the internal bullshit that I moved away from, you know, from the UK. And it's funny because as you say that, I think a lot of people do think the grass is greener on the other side, but it's often you have to go and tend to your own garden, tend to your own lawn, tend to what's inside, and we're not. I'm not talking about fixing your past or anything. It's actually like, well, who am I? What's your vision? What's the why? What do you want to do in your life? And actually
Hmm.
get concrete with that, because without that why, and I often talk about it as a magnet, and the vision. So if you have a why, you're being pushed by something because you're gonna be doing. I have that why, it's pushing me towards things. If you have that vision, you're being pulled by something, and then you're in the middle. You drop one of those. You don't have a why. You don't have a vision. You lose out in that magnetism. You're not getting pushed and pulled at the same time. It's
Hmm.
almost like, you know, you get two magnets in a coin. You can hold a coin in the air and it spins or whatever, and it's cool. But then if you take one of the magnets away, the coin just slaps down and doesn't go anywhere, and it stops. It just the magic is gone. It's just attached to the
Hmm.
magnet. So I always have that as an image, that when you have that powerful why, you're being pushed, and when you have that vision that where you want to go, it's pulling you. And I can tell you, a lot of the people who I speak to, who come to me who are struggling, it's one of the first things I pick up on so quickly. With a couple of questions, I can pick up on they have no why, they have no vision. And it's so obvious. So I'm talking to you. I know. I've read a lot of your threads, and we're engaging with each other daily on Twitter. I can see that why and that purpose for you. So the question I want to ask you now, if I was to give you a realistic with magic wand, where does Toby want to be in the next 6 months, year, 18 months, 2 years? Where is this Twitter journey? Where I know you're a CEO of a nonprofit, you've got 6 kids. Is your seventh on the way? Is that
Not today.
not today? You've got a big family, loving wife. Where's the future? Where's your big vision? Where are you heading to?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Absolutely awesome question. So, I think honestly, it will depend on how much I can overcome still my imposter syndrome, because we all
Okay.
have it. Do you know? I think we all
Yeah.
still have it. And the reason I'm saying that is that I would probably started off being more on the kind of melancholic side, especially as a kind of teenager. kind of like really pushed through this. And as you were alluding to, like, the a lot of the people kind of I study and write about, the reason I write about those people is I'm so inspired by them that I want to share that because I just think some of them are amazing, like a Ross Edgley who swam around the UK, like
Yep.
literally. That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
I like that, but also it helps me learn better. Again, coming from university, when you write about something that deepens learning, so it helps me integrate those lessons a bit more. So I like that, but the more I speak to some, people or people, I get to know, they're always asking certain questions, and I go like, okay, that's interesting because my reality, being, like, yes, running a nonprofit and having the big family, and it seems from the outside like a bit like, okay, how is that all done? Like, how do you guys do
Yes.
it? Um, and for me, that's kind of normality, and it's part of being an amazing team, an amazing wife, kids being great. All of that is obviously it's a very unique ecosystem in
Yeah.
which that is possible. Um, but equally, I know it can inspire people. Like I know it can, but I really struggle with the notion of like putting myself out there so much that it seems very egotistical or arrogant of like saying like, oh, look at me, I can do all of these things, which is nothing I want to do. Like I don't want to be seen in that light. What I would really like to do though is if I can if I can help people maybe feeling a bit of or getting a bit of the inspiration that I get from people like yourself when I read from you or we were talking about Tyler Todd earlier or
Yeah.
Save Your Sons, there are many great people out actually or even just on Twitter, which is why I started because I saw these amazing people wanted to be part of that community. If I can find a way of sharing that authentically and inspiring some people to think, it's you don't have to just go like, oh, I want to be a business owner and I can't be a family man, or if I want to have a family, I can't excel in my job, or if I want to have a large family, I need to be fat, like as a dad, like
Yeah.
there are all these dichotomies that of course it would be the easy path, but it's not for me. I don't think it's the right path. So I'm trying to push myself daily, and if for some reason that storytelling help somebody else to even just say, I'm going to get off the couch or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, then that's worth it. And the truth being that I do get these DMs, whether that's on some on Instagram, but mainly on Twitter, of people just saying, I read this really inspired me, or thank you so much for X, Y, and Z. And that is so uplifting. That's so great to think that, oh, my little share of like, squats in the gym, some other dad will go like, oh, this dad did it, so I do today.
Yeah.
That's fantastic because that's how I live. I get inspired by so many people. So I would like to positively contribute to that. In terms of where I would be in 6 months, I wouldn't be anywhere different, like physically. I love my job. I love what I do. I love my family, love where we live. But if I could share that, like if I could reach more people to share a positive message of, pushing yourself and self-growth and becoming a more balanced version of yourself, but a better version, that would be it.
I think you're doing a great job. I've seen you grow over the last year or so on Twitter. So don't sell yourself short. You provide a lot of value. You write good threads. You're growing. You're catching me. Follower
Thank you.
wise, I've my account's just frozen over the last year because I've gone very. I think I've niched down a little bit with my content. So but I'll not get too much into that. But no, I like your stuff, man. I think it's impressive. I like that. I like that future vision. I think you've got a lot to offer. So just talking to you today, the experiences that you have, from the PhD to moving from Germany to Scotland to the work that you do as well with the people with those disabilities. I mean that's it's all inspiring. 6 kids, like I have a dog and I struggle. Do you know what I mean? I'm kidding. I don't struggle, but I have a lovely greyhound beside me. He's just looked up at me. But yeah, no, I honestly, man, I think you just need to from being around you and hearing that you have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I would just banish that because I think you've got a lot to offer. I really do, and I really do enjoy reading your content. And I was going to follow on to my next question. I was going to be like, where you want to go? And I was going to ask you, what do you think that's currently slowing you down or standing in your way from getting to your next level? But you've kind of touched on it a little bit. Is there anything else that
Yeah,
you feel like is getting in your way?
um, I think what was getting in the way is probably a lack of like good storytelling, because storytelling is the thing
Mm,
that captures us the
yes,
most.
I'm 100%. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
We could have a
So
conversation with Kieran Drew and his amazing ascent and
don't
his amazing
don't.
storytelling.
I know, and he was on here. No, I mean, I was lucky enough to connect with Kieran before he blew up the way he's blown up. So
Yeah,
I had a couple of phone calls with him. without being charged $500. So that's quite good.
Yeah.
But no, Kieran is the absolute master in that, and that is really where like his stuff is so
So
inspiring.
good.
His journey is inspiring,
Yeah.
but it's just yeah, you learn so much from him. And as you said, it's the storytelling, it's the way he does it, which is I think why I would probably in terms of where I'm going is probably leaning into video maybe a bit more if I can,
Hmm.
because I guess that shows a bit more in terms of like reality of like there you are and that's the surrounding. So just to give a bit of that. The other thing is just time, because at the end of the day, I'm like this is something I enjoy doing, and the reason I enjoy doing it is because I started writing online to find like-minded people. So I
Yeah.
think what happened is 2021, we all know what was kind of going on in the world at that point. And on top of that, just before COVID, one of my best friends had moved actually to Australia. And he was somebody I was doing all these kind of physical challenges with and really kind of pushing each other. So I felt a bit of kind of intellectual isolation, I guess. Somebody like sparring partners. I was missing
Yeah.
sparring partners to really do stuff with. And I knew they were out there. And I just thought like, okay, how to connect with them. So that's why I started like, a blog and a newsletter and attended some courses too, where I just met amazing people. And then kind of grew this ecosystem, I guess, which we kind of all have to a degree, where
Yeah.
the people that are attracted to that find you and you find them. And then suddenly, so I enjoy going on every day because I'm inspired. I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by so many people that you and I interact with. They have amazing lives and amazing stories. So that's why I like doing it, but it's not my full-time job. So I can't and don't want to spend like 3 hours content creating every day. So that's the only thing where I go, okay, that will is a hesitate like that's holding me back. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it is a lot of work, and I admire people who do it on the side. I started off doing it on the side, and I spent 2020 again, the pandemic. I think I had 75 followers on Twitter, and now I've got 70. So I don't know what X amount of improvement is that in 3 years, and I've gone from never earning a dollar online to making over six figures, and so that's been amazing for me. But yeah, I don't think I would have been able to get there while I definitely left my corporate job too early, and maybe another person has told me that no, you left it at the right time. Uh, recently, as Tori, I had him on the podcast a few weeks back. I mean, I think we had a similar conversation. Maybe it was on the podcast or off the podcast about that. But I was able to create what I have now because I was able to put my full attention into it.
Hmm.
And I've always struggled with in my life. So one of my struggles is I can't do like 20 things at once. I can't do three, five, six, seven things at once. I can't be at work and be doing this full time and then also maybe out playing sports full time. And I need that downtime in between things. And I admire people who just seem to have every minute of their day just seems to be productive. I'm not. Yes, I'm a performance guy, and I do get a lot of stuff done. But a lot of my performance comes down to the fact that I will sit on the sofa later today for half an hour and do nothing. I will sit and stare at a wall, or I'll go for a walk with no phone with the dog, and I'll do nothing. And would I call that productive? 100% I call that productive. Some of my most productive time is doing sweet FA. But I admire people. I look at you, I look at Tyler Todd, I look at even Save Your Sons, big families doing these things, lots of stuff going on. Very, very impressive, and almost I get inspired by you guys because I'm like, hold on a second, I have a dog and a wife. I should be knocking that. I should be doing 10 times more at level. These guys got so much opportunity. But yeah, it's funny how we all inspire each other in different ways, and we all look at each other in different ways and get energy. From that network. And you're right, it is going out and finding that network of people, like-minded people. And I would say I'm probably in a much better condition mentally, emotionally, and physically because of the content that I read, because of the people who I'm around, because I look at yourself and I look at Tyler and I look at other guys. I'm not a fitness coach and I've never really been into fitness, but I look how fit you guys are, and I'm like, I need to up my game. And it just happens. So I know I play a lot of soccer, but soccer doesn't build muscles, But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's very inspiring. I'm glad you found the space and you took that leap
Yeah.
to write online.
Yeah. I think what's probably missing though is when everything is filled to such a brim is the ability to produce sometimes the quality that you're seeking, right? And being
Yes.
strategic about stuff. So that would definitely be a struggle where I admire what you're doing of actually being so strategic about saying, I need that half hour. It is productive. I value that time because I know what it will allow me to do later on. Whereas then, for somebody, I guess in my position, it's a lot of reactive work, which sounds counterintuitive to somebody saying, "Oh, I run a business," because my job is meant to be strategic, and
Yeah.
it is to a large degree. But at the same time, 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes and says, "Oh, do you have a minute?" They're not telling you good news. So you're
Yeah.
always presented with like, need to sort this out or find somebody to do this or so it's the same with the kids. So I go
Yeah.
from somebody demanding breakfast to the office where somebody demands an HR solution to coming back down and to somebody telling me they've lost a sock. So it's just a constant like, I need this from you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm probably conditioned to it in a way, but no, I think it's really admirable to even just for you to have that self-awareness to say, this is what I need to be my best self, to be my productive self.
Hmm.
And that's why you crush it because you know exactly what you need. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I describe myself as a extrovert who acts like an introvert, or an introvert who acts like an extrovert when around people. Like when I'm talking to you now, and people on the podcast wouldn't believe that I'm an introvert. That I get my energy from being alone, from
Hmm.
disappearing. I disappear, and I've always been like that in my whole life. Like in front of people, put me in front of a team of people at work. I'm a leader. I lead people. I talk. I've talked in front of 200-300 people with a microphone in my hand for days on end at different events when I used to work in corporate. Very much that kind of person. But even after this podcast, I know that when I take the boy out here, my dog behind me, for a walk, I will not be taking my phone with me. I will not have any podcast or music in my ears because I know that after speaking to you for an hour, that I want to let that steep. I want to let that flow out of me. I want to let that sort of that energy to pass through me, and I don't want to distract myself with more noise because I just need that time to relax. To relax. I don't know whether I've got some type of ADHD or something else, but some of my days, if I don't give myself that space, I am like 10 screens open, picking up phone, closing Twitter, opening Twitter, closing Twitter again. But when I give myself that space, that time away from technology, get myself outdoors, not necessarily working out hard, just going for a walk, I seem to be a lot more zen.
Mm.
And it just that those little gaps, they're called renewal zones. Well, I call them renewal zones, where I purposely will do something for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes that is counterintuitive to what most other people would do. And I'm a Jedi Knight at this. I'm not a master at it. But if anytime I'm out of a long meeting, my mind as the meeting's finishing is don't open another tab. Don't open another tab. Leave the house. Get away from
Hmm.
the computer. Close the computer. Just get away from the screen for 10 minutes. Just go and stand. Even if I just go to the toilet, drink a glass of water, and stand on the balcony for 5 minutes, I'm creating that space that allows me to be less reactive. Because as you know from working, you get out of one meeting and the next thing you get 10 emails, and the next thing you know, you don't give yourself the space, and you start answering those emails. So it's always a thing for me, even when I worked in corporate still. As soon as the meeting finishes, before I get stuck into anything else, give yourself 5 minutes. Just get away from stuff just for 5 minutes. It's for me, it's changed my life. It stopped me
Hmm.
that weird bump 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 pinball
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
life. Sorry, it's like my podcast now. I'm not here interviewing me.
I I find it's interesting. I find this incredibly valuable due to the fact that I was speaking to my coach today, and we were kind of going through that, and we are kind of just analyzing some stuff, and he came to a very similar conclusion in terms of when I was describing my day, and he said like, yeah, but when is there space to do nothing? Like,
Mm,
where is the space to just go? just just don't do anything, just sit, where do you create silence in your
yeah,
life, which is exactly what you were saying. So it's interesting how that um how I've heard it now from two people in one day. So
you're being
yeah,
told. You're being
yeah,
told right
exactly.
now. The universe is telling you something. The big guy
Yeah,
upstairs, whatever you
yeah.
want to call him, he's tapping you on the shoulder right now and saying that you need to listen to that. That's my
That's right.
rule. That's my rule.
Yeah.
If I hear something very similar, or I have very similar conversations 2 or 3 times in a row, very very quickly, I'm like, I'm being told something.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no,
uh,
no, I agree, I agree. Well, I mean, one thing I really love, and it is semi counterintuitive or counterproductive to what we're saying, which is like silence and don't exercise. But going for a run in the hills here without headphones on, it's like that's just bliss. You know, all
mhm.
you hear is your feet on the ground, that fresh air that we have here. I mean, yes, it's a lot of times it's very cold and very windy, but it is incredibly fresh. And the way you come back home, you've just exhausted yourself. It's just, yeah. I think that going back to something we said earlier in terms of fitness, what I see is especially for dads, especially for working dads, fitness is the most important thing to
Yeah.
get in control of your emotions, because we
Yes.
have like we've mentally we might be quite astute and whatever, and we keep our emotions in check at work because we have to, and that's the way we've conditioned ourselves. But then when you come home, whether that's a wife or even a dog, like who's just barking, you just go like, oh, come on, and you shout at your dog, or you send him outside and you just suddenly go, hang on, he was just happy to see me, like
Yeah.
this is not right. But
Yeah.
so I find for that, yeah, for me, it's working out in the morning. It just makes me just like calm down like that much more, where I just go, okay, I've done something for me. I've exhausted myself. I'm emotionally that much more stable.
Yeah. It's afternoon for me. I need that. I'm like a greenhouse or whatever. I get the energy bills throughout the day when it comes to squirreliness. When I'm talking about that
Mm,
squirrely energy, if I work out in the morning, I then lose the ability to do deep work because I feel like I've accomplished something.
yeah.
But if I work out in the afternoon, I have all that built up energy, all that noise, all that jumping on a podcast with you, talking to somebody on the phone, meeting somebody in the street, answering lots of tweets. You're having a post go off wild on LinkedIn and have people attacking you. You're like, oh, I know you know about that. Maybe we'll talk about that quickly yeah, for the listeners. But well, I work out probably between either I go for a walk between 3:30, or a couple of times a week I'll grab the kettlebells that are behind me there, and I'll pick them up. Now I'm not a big guy. I'm in okay shape, but I love throwing kettlebells around. I don't go to the gym. I've got a couple of people telling me in my life that at my age now, in my early 40s, I should be lifting heavier. And when I say kettlebells, they're like, no, that's not heavy enough. So I've now had 2 or 3 people recently tell me that. So I have to go and follow that
Hmm.
rule. I've been told a couple of times now. So I'm like, I have to go and start doing that. And but yeah, the afternoon for me is that before my wife gets back from her job, because I work from home, I get that energy out. Because if I don't get the energy out, when I don't go for a walk a day, or if I don't exercise, I by 5, 6 o'clock at night, I feel this like energy, and it's wrong.
Mm.
It's not a good energy. It's a bad energy. It's like I'm
It's like
this
having too much sugar before bed, or you just
yeah,
get
yeah. It's
jittery. Yeah.
jittery. Yeah, it's the wrong type of energy, and if you don't funnel it in, or it's almost like you have to release it, and you release it by doing exercise. And I think I think that's where a lot of guys get wrong with their emotions is that they don't know how to release the emotions. So they maybe come home and have a couple of beers, and then that makes them feel calm for like the first half an hour or an hour. But then the alcohol kicks in, and then something happens, and then that bad energy comes back. But you've also added a chemical to it, and boom, you're having an argument with your wife,
Yeah.
and that's a sad state. So I think that's where that exercise really keys in a huge component of it.
That's right.
Um, yeah, so we both agree on that. But I'm an afternoon. You're a morning guy. I'm an afternoon
Yes.
guy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's to be honest, it's the only time in the day where I can take that. There's no, as soon as the kids are up,
You're done?
that's it. That's it. And there's no way I will be able to work out at 8 p.m. Plus I would then, push myself so much further into like bedtime. But yeah, at the end of the day, just wiped,
Yeah.
Often I finish work at like closer to 9:30. So by that time there's, no way.
No way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to
Yeah.
find what works for us. And I think that's when we're talking about creating our lives and our vision.
Exactly.
It's I don't want to go on a rant here, but it will lead nicely into the last couple of questions that we have. But I don't love, and you might notice this, I don't post a lot of content around this is your best daily routine.
Mm.
I don't post content right like that because I know inside that is bullshit because every single one of us is different.
Yeah.
You have 6 kids. I have a greyhound. Our days are going to look dramatically different. If I tried to get up and do what you did, it's not going to fit how my life is. And if you tried doing what I did, your kids would be mad at you. Do you know? When I see that content online, like Jeff Bezos' morning routine, Elon Musk's morning routine, or like this is the elite morning 3-hour process. I'm just get the fuck out of here. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
You can swear in here. It's my podcast. But I'm like that's unreal. And some of the dudes, I know I haven't got any kids, but some of the younger dudes that talk about performance and productivity, and like, why get up at this time and then do this and then do that and then do this? You've got no kids. Like
you can see that the people that then sometimes start chiming in, they go like, this is BS. I mean, what I like is when people share like, this is what I do and this is what works for me.
Yeah.
Like I find inspiring. Like even like, what we were just doing just now, you were telling me like your routines and the way it works for you. And I'm now thinking, I'm like, oh, like as we said, like the rule of having heard it twice, like, you're making these, what did you call them? Renewal zones?
Renewal zones, I call them.
Renewal zones. I really like that. I think that's great to actually say that, okay, hang on, this meeting is finished. Put in a buffer of 10 minutes. I've got the hills. I can see them right here, Just stroll into the hills for 5 minutes and come back again. That 10 minute of the decompression seems to be like a really good thing. So that I can take away with, and I can try and build that into my life. The rest of your routine I can't, but that's why I like hearing what other people do and why they do it, and I can then do with it what I like, rather than being told like, well, if you don't have 27 raw eggs in the morning and followed by an ice bath, like, your testosterone levels are going to plummet, and you go, oh my God. Like,
yeah. If you're not sunning your balls and eating 20 eggs, or like drinking, if you're not showering black coffee.
Vitally important for any dad, like.
Yeah, it is hilarious. It is hilarious. But I mean, it gets the likes. It gets the likes, that type of content. But I get it. We're all at different places. And I know that you had I just want to touch on this because I thought as soon as I read that thread, I went, he's going to get dragged for this. And you did. But it's so funny. And I said, if one line would have saved you the stress. So, Toby, you were Twitter and LinkedIn famous for about 24 hours.
Yeah.
Because you had a post. And I know it was quite fresh on when you were starting out. You actually closed your account briefly, didn't you?
For 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks, yeah. And I was sad to see you go because I was enjoying your content. I think I mentioned to you in a Telegram chat, don't walk away. It will blow over. Yeah. But you wrote a post about your daily routine. This kind of links into what we're talking about.
That's right.
And you talked about having 6 kids and being a CEO. And the thread was great. It was awesome. But you forgot. Can I say you forgot to mention your wife, or
I mean, to be honest, for anybody who just saw the headline tweet, yes, it looked atrocious.
Yeah.
I ended the thread kind of saying like, my wife has given me the biggest gift of my life with the 6 kids, and the best thing I can do is like organize my time to serve her best.
Yeah.
So I ended with that, but nobody read to the end.
Nobody read that.
Nobody read to the end.
It was for people who don't know, and I'll explain quickly a bit more depth. You had people came after you saying, "What about your wife? This is terrible. You're chauvinistic." The amount of hate that came your way from that thread was unrealistic. I was blown away by it, especially on LinkedIn, because I'm on LinkedIn as well, and I saw you popping up on LinkedIn. I was just like, what? This is uncalled for. This is over the top. It was a pile on. And the thing that frustrated me was a lot of the people who were piling on you are the same people that, and I don't know, want to get too deep into this, but the same people that are out trying to create safe spaces for people. I found it very confusing. Why are you piling on this guy and almost cyberbullying, or it was bullying this person because of like a little bit of a miswritten thread? It was intense. And how did that, I mean, you obviously had that hit you pretty hard and it made you feel, it was
it's actually bang on a year ago today.
Is it?
So I think it was the 21st of June, but it was a Tuesday. So
crazy. That's weird that we're having that. That's a year later. That's crazy, man.
I mean, yes, that was by far the most traumatic thing I've ever had to go through. Um, the thread kind of popped off and went okay. And the truth is, I had written a very similar version of that thread a few months earlier, and it
Yep,
did
I
well.
remember. Yep.
And somebody said like, oh, your wife, because it wasn't in the headline. I was like, okay, yeah, definitely, I definitely take care of that this time, which is why I ended with that thing saying like to honor her. And I also put my calendar in. So I was trying to be like super transparent. So I put like a week's worth of my calendar in to show like all the times that I do spend, making food for my kids, picking them up from
Yeah.
school, spending
Yeah.
time. So I try to just go like, okay,
I
well,
remember.
there was value in this. So,
Yeah.
let's just show people. Obviously, it went horribly wrong. And I mean, yeah, to the degree where I got tons. I mean, the kind of post telling me that was a piece of shit. They got like 100,000 likes,
Yeah.
easy. I got a boatload of DMs of telling me what a horrible person I was. That I was. I had people go after me saying like, oh, you must be cheating on your wife. Your kids will hate you forever. You should kill yourself.
Wow.
It went incredibly dark where
So
it was just
dark.
like I spent 3 nights not sleeping. And the reason I couldn't sleep is because my heart was racing so fast the whole night through that I couldn't bear it. And I couldn't bear telling my wife because I remember I was standing in the kitchen. I think it was on the Thursday because it took like a day to go really bad.
Yeah.
I was standing in the kitchen on the Thursday morning and I was literally shaking. Hadn't slept for 2 nights, and I was so afraid of having blown everything, of like, what would happen to my family, what would happen to my job, like all of these things were just going through my head where I just thought like I have this amazing life, and I tried to do just something positive. It wasn't out
Yeah.
for anything negative. I wasn't saying something overtly negative about somebody, but I obviously positioned myself in a very vulnerable and very bad light. And going back to earlier, this is not a person that I want to be portrayed as because I really deeply believe I'm not
Yeah.
that type of person that I was kind of made out to be. So that just left me in a horrible state where as I said, didn't talk to my wife about it for 3 days, but she obviously noticed straight away because
Yeah.
I was like a
Different.
shy little boy. I
Yeah.
was saying yes to everything. I went to school dropping the kids off, thinking everybody had seen it and everybody would comment and like whisper behind my back about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was actually when I wasn't even actively on Twitter, but on LinkedIn, but somebody had sent me a really long email, and I was like, "Who is this person?" Because it said female mob on LinkedIn. It's like, okay, well, what's this about? And I read it, and it was somebody saying, I'm so sorry this is going on, and it was a woman who was writing and saying, like, I think this is completely uncalled for. I'm trying, like, blah. And I was just like, what do you mean with LinkedIn? Why is it, And then she linked,
Yeah.
and then I searched for it. Obviously, took LinkedIn down straight away because that's linked to all your stuff that you're, kind of professionally doing. Um, but yeah, and then just had to delete the account and just thought, okay, that was it. Like I had fun. I built a great group of people, but it was just a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible moment of like probably some suffering some sort of trauma definitely from
Well,
that.
you did. You
Um,
you you you
yeah.
100% did. It was that what you're describing is exactly that. You were put in a terrible position because you were literally famous. You were infamous for a couple of days, and it was absolutely, especially on LinkedIn. I Twitter is bad, but there's a weirdness to LinkedIn that I like. Twitter's like Twitter. They call it out to your face. LinkedIn, it's like they twist it and they manipulate it and they people will just call you a c word on Twitter or a
Hmm.
dickhead or whatever. But there was this weird twisting of it. Like it became like almost like a Me Too movement. Look at this sort of like angle to it. And I'm reading these things because I can see it on Twitter. All these big creators on Twitter. It's just my timeline's full of your face on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I'm like, holy shit! No wonder Toby's cancelled his account on Twitter.
Yeah,
It
see,
was
I
yeah,
wasn't even aware of any of that because I tried to stay away from it. It was only friends. I mean, that the one positive thing I would say, the amount of care and support messages that came my way was really was incredible
yeah,
at the same time, especially from the people that I'd known, like somebody like Kieran and all those people and the people we know, Ty and whatever,
yeah,
all reaching out saying, this will blow over and we know you and you're not this person. And,
yeah,
people reaching out, just sending me their cell phone number, just saying like, just call me, like if you need
yeah,
me. And I thought this is really nice. And only afterwards did a friend of me actually say, yeah, they wrote blog posts about you. I mean, the thing is, it just because it went also so far where people then went down the timeline and then were commenting on stuff. So it was just a few days before, it was like Father's Day, right? So I was trying to like show more of myself. So I had a picture that my wife took of me and the kids. We went for a Father's Day walk together. And I was just like, I don't know, like Happy Father's Day, something positive. And then people were like, oh, look at this, like he makes his wife do the work. She's not mentioned she's not in the picture. He's just posting and he's just using his kids and stuff. And we're like, this was just a Father's Day post, or like,
Yeah.
I mean, it went into all sorts of things where I had to then start deleting stuff and it wasn't fun.
No, I'm sorry I went through that, but yeah, yeah, man, I was watching it from the sidelines. I mean, I in the group chat that we were in at the time, I did tell you to, don't close your account; it will blow over. And I'm glad you didn't. So a year later, you're here and you're doing well, and it blew over. No one can remember it except for me bringing it up on a podcast.
No, I guess, I mean, the reason I went back is to say, I mean, the way I position myself, justifiable uh, anger came towards me, So I'm not denying that, but at the same time, I felt like I was made out to be such a horrible person that I thought, I
Yeah.
know I'm not. I know I'm not. So I didn't want the bullies as such to kind of win, and I just thought like maybe there's a way of actually telling the full story because
Hmm.
as I said, and I think this will feed into big time into what I was saying earlier in terms of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like I was burned, so I know
Yeah.
what that felt like and I don't want to feel that way again. At the same time, I think I'm trying to send a positive message. I'm not trying to position myself as somebody that I'm not. It takes hard work, it takes amazing people around you, but try and inspire people to whatever degree I can if that's
Yeah.
possible. That's a bonus, and that's what I try to get back to, and luckily it's been okay.
Good. Good. No, it's awesome. It was a random thing that happened. You don't know how these things happen, and I think it's a mistake I've made. It's as we're learning storytelling and as we're learning hooks and marketing, we like come across these templates or these structures, and we're like, oh, I can use this structure to help this thread get more likes on it. But then people then look at it and be like, oh my god, this that, and the other. I had a term once, a tweet once, go crazy a little bit. Well, I got attacked because I said something like the only reason why you're you know like a certain way is because of low emotional control or something. And it was a stoic idea, from CBD
Mhm.
therapy. It was basically your you're emotional. You don't have emotional control because you whatever. I can't remember the exact wording of the tweet, but I rather than being one of the reasons or this is possibly why you feel tired, I came in very very straight. This is why you are like. I came in very sort of like I 100% believe, and it got a little bit of traction. I had it be retweeted by my friends, but then the normies or normal Twitter came in, and I had like people attacking me saying I was a piece of shit, saying that like oh I had COVID and this is why I'm tired and I've got 3 kids, I still I started to have a conversation back with them all the time. I know it's a stoic idea of you only control what you control, your thoughts, your actions, and words. It's a that's why you're tired is because you give yourself energy out to the external rather than the internal. And people kept, oh, look at this guy, blah, 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 blah. I said, where did you learn this? And I went, well, I went through a CBD course. I've got I've done some CBD stuff. And some guy was like, "Oh, are you a therapist?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach, but I've done some." And they were like, "Oh, so you're just a hack." And I was just like, oh, everything I said was just like being twisted and thrown back at me. And I was just like, "Damn, that was just a fucking tweet," And it wasn't even like I'm attacking you. I'm calling you, a word, or I'm attacking anybody in particular. It was just basically a thought saying the reason why you're tired is because you lack emotional control. But like with other
Yeah.
words in it, I just. And I still stand by it.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
not going to apologize for it. I just deleted it, blocked a bunch of people, moved on. But
Yeah,
like Twitter's weird like that. Like the internet is weird. You don't know how you're going to piss people off.
it's gonna
Some
happen.
somebody frames it in a certain way, and then lots of people jump in on it. So that's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. So anyway, we've been talking for about an hour and a half. It's been a great conversation. And the last sort of 30 minutes, we've just wandered off into like a general conversation, which has been great. I almost forgot that we're on a podcast, which is lovely. So I've got two questions to wrap up. I know you're a busy guy, so I don't want to keep you all day. So the first question that I want to ask you is, what is a contrarian view that you have on sort of self-performance or personal development where you push back against the norm? I'll give you an example. Mine is I despise optimization. I think optimization is for Usain Bolt trying to shave a second off his 100 meters. I think optimization is for an organization that's already doing 100 million or a couple of million. They're trying to optimize to really improve. But yet I feel like a lot of people in the personal development space start with optimization. They're going to be like, oh, I'm going to optimize my days. I'm going to optimize my how I show up. Well, first of all, you have to build your foundations. So I push back against the general idea about optimization. It's something that I've talked about before in my podcast, which you might have heard. Yeah. But where do you push back against the norm? Like, I push back against a lot of things, but that's my main one that I think is obvious that I push back on.
I would say what I've seen with a lot of people is the chase for the perfect app to solve all your kind of to-do issues and all of that stuff.
Yes.
When actually all you probably need at the beginning is just a piece of paper and a system to work with that, because I think a lot of people, it probably is pretty much in support of what you were saying with the optimization bit, where people would spend hundreds of dollars on courses, hundreds of dollars on apps, and countless hours and weeks trying to streamline an app to make it work for them in a weird way. And actually what I found is, like, I've got a few apps that I now use for different uses, and because they work for me, and it wouldn't work for anybody else like that. And that's cool. Like, it doesn't need to. And so I wasted a lot of time trying to build a perfect Notion template that would do everything. It's like, no, it doesn't, and that's okay. And I have a system that works for me, but I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to find the perfect solution.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that as well. I'm a pen paper journal guy. I have two journals, one for emotional work and ideas, the other one for tracking my business. I look at them almost daily, but I do have Notion, and I use Notion for my content, but Notion's for my content creation. It's my ideas for my creation of my business, and maybe some client work and programs and courses in there. I don't have a Zapier system that attaches my best tweets into a Notion doc that makes everything,
I know. And you feel you have to, because that's again, it goes to the gurus telling you that, you need the integrations, and then you're like like a dad at the end of the day, 9 p.m. thinking, oh, do you know this? I won't name the creator, but I think we probably know, has just told me the 6-step method of like using Zapier to run a solopreneur business, and going like, should I do this too? Because he's really successful. It's like, no, it's fine.
I think you got to find your own groove. I think that's the big thing, and I think a lot of people, they do waste time. I call it professional procrastination, where you're doing something that you think is going to save you time, but if you just did the fucking work, excuse me again for swearing, but if you just did the work, you would have got the work done. And I know at a certain point you will need optimization. At a certain point you will need things. I mean, I have Trello for my clients. I have Notion for my content creation. We all use email. Like, we have Telegram, Discord. We have all these apps and all these things already. And I don't really think there's a perfect system, but I do think the best system for me, and I think one of the best systems ever invented, is a pen and a bit of paper.
That's right. Yeah, agreed.
It just works out like that. Okay, awesome. Last question. We'll wrap up. If you could get everybody in the world to wear a T-shirt for one day, a printed T-shirt for one day, what would that T-shirt say?
I like this. Probably don't shy away from hard work.
Yes. I like it. What do you think mine would say?
Take time to recharge.
Yeah, maybe. Do less dumb shit. But
That's true. That's true. That's true.
That's true. But take time to recharge is doing less dumb shit. Yeah, I like that. So what was it again? What was your T-shirt?
I think it would be don't shy away from hard work.
Don't shy away from hard work. That's brilliant. I think that sort of brings this whole podcast conversation to a close, because we started off with the hard work that you've done, get all the way through to getting your PhD, to having your 6 kids, to CEO, to content creation. It really does link back to your self-performance philosophy. So Fantastic, Tobi. It's been great to have you on the podcast. Before you go, two questions. No, first thing, tell everybody on the podcast where they can find you, where they can hear more about you. And then also, did I not ask you something that I should have asked you?
No, I mean, this was a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it. As you said, I wasn't aware we were doing a podcast. It was just two people hanging out, having a good kind of intellectual sparring session, really. I'm on Twitter, on Instagram predominantly, and it's Tobi_Emonts, which is Emonts. And my website is forgingbalance.com.
Forgingbalance.com. I will put both of those in the show notes below. If you don't already follow Tobi, I 100% recommend that you do. Fantastic follow. Lots of great stuff in there. Tobi, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on, and I'll speak to you on the timeline pretty soon.
Thank you.
That was the 56th episode of the SPS podcast. Obviously, I will put all of Tobi's details in the show notes below, so please go and check him out. Go and give him a follow. He's well worth it. Also, if you want to slide on over to StephenTimoney.com, that's StephenTimoney.com. You can check out all my newsletters there. You can check out my Pro Accelerator program, one-on-one coaching program for solopreneurs and business owners. And also, you can check out every other episode of the SPS podcast. We love the fact that you're listening to this. I love the fact that you've listened all the way to this part of the podcast. I deeply appreciate you, and we'll speak to you in the next one. Make it a good one.